I'm Teresa Carlson, and I worked with Dr. Patricia Maurice at University of Notre Dame to do a literature review on equine psychology. So that basically means that I read a bunch of articles explaining experiments in this field and assessed them and then compiled the information from all of them into this presentation. So overall, what I was studying was this question: what are the benefits of studying equine psychology? So first of all, what does that mean? What does it mean when I say equine psychology? Basically, that means it's the study of the emotionality, learning skills, and reactions to various events and environments in horses. And essentially, we're just studying the way that a horse thinks and how the way that they think affects the way that they behave. So how exactly do we study that? A lot of different experiments that have a very specific question that we're studying. So an example of one of these questions would be what I have written here: does DNA affect learning ability? So in this case, we would be testing horses with different DNA constructs and testing how well they can learn in different tests. So one of those could be a memorization learning task, which would be you show them something, they have to remember the task and then do it again for you without you showing it to them again. So how well can they remember? And you can kind of compare horses of different breeds and different DNAs and see if that has an effect on them. Another great way for us to make sure that we're studying equine psychology effectively is to make sure that we're testing as many horses as possible so that we can get more of a general view of horses as a whole. And it's also really important that we make sure that we're caring for the horses in a consistent way during the testing. And by that, I mean that they're all getting the same food, they're all living in the same barn, in the same environment, same schedule, so that we know that none of that is the effect that's causing the difference in our results. And so that we can make sure that we really are just testing the one factor that we're trying to be. So mostly when we're studying equine psychology, it's a lot of observations. So you're just observing what the horse is doing, kind of their general reactions. And so that can be over a period of time. So every few minutes, we kind of check in and see what they're doing in reaction to their environment or an object that we've placed in the pen with them. Another great way for us to do more of a quantitative test is heart rate monitoring, blood work, and breathing measurements. So in this picture here, you see a horse with kind of a strap around its stomach, and that is like a heart rate monitor, or you can use it to test breathing. And so essentially a faster heart rate means that they're more excitable and anxious possibly, whereas a slower heart rate would mean they're calmer. And the same thing goes with breathing. If they're breathing faster, that means that they're more excited. And if they're breathing calmly and deeply, obviously they're more relaxed. And also, we don't have time to go into the specifics of it, but we can draw their blood, and like their adrenaline and stuff can change the levels in their blood. So we can tell that way too. So that's kind of more of a way to see what's going on inside that we can't observe. Now these methods do have limitations. So what are those? Unfortunately, these methods of studying equine psychology are often very biased because it's difficult to quantify a horse's reaction. Like I was talking about, those observations are difficult to make them kind of standardized, because one person could observe a horse in a different way than the other person does when the horse is really doing just the same thing. So we kind of need to come up with a standardized method to categorize a specific action of a horse so that we can make sure that everyone that's doing experiments in this field is writing their observations in a standard vocabulary. It's also difficult to get enough horses to test to make a general statement about the species as a whole. So that means like different breeds, different ages, different sexes, and stuff like that. It's hard to get a big, diverse enough group to do these methods on and keep them all in the same controlled environment, so we know that we're just testing the factor we're trying to. So I just talked about the limitations of the methods. How can we improve these methods? Mostly by a lot more experiments, because more data will allow us to make more general statements once we've gathered more data in different areas of this field also. And like I talked about a little bit earlier too, what is the development of a more standard method of observation. So kind of, and this will grow in time as we gain a better understanding of the body language of horses, which will also come with the more experiments that I talked about. So once we kind of have a better understanding of their body language, which you can see in this chart here, we have some images of their different signals. So kind of with their tails, or the way that they're standing, or the way that they hold their head, kind of tells them something about how they're feeling and how they're reacting. So once we can get even more information on that, it'll be much easier for us to make a very standard method of observation, so we can give an exact action a name, and then we can be more standardized and make more general comparisons between experiments also. We talked about this a little bit earlier, but it's really important to emphasize is that we have very consistent control variables, meaning, like I said, they live in the same place, they follow the same diet, the same the same training and everything, so that we know that that's not causing an effect. So it's not like this horse got better food, so they learned better. Like, unless that's what we're testing, we don't want that to be a factor that's affecting it. And also, it's really important that we use a better balance between positive and negative reinforcement. And what I mean by that is positive reinforcement, for example, would be something that the horse wants. So maybe a treat or a pat, something that they're wanting to get. Whereas negative reinforcement would be something that they're trying to avoid. So that could be just a verbal reprimand, or kind of a more physical one, like the tap of a whip, or a light smack of the hand or something. Nothing abusive, but just negative reinforcement, so that they know that they did something wrong. Now, when we are training horses and not in an experiment, or just in general, negative reinforcement is a lot more effective for horses, because they'd rather run from something they don't like than run to something they do. So when we're doing our experiments, we often use positive reinforcement, which is not the best method, because we know that negative reinforcement is more effective and more often used in everyday life. So we want to try to get a better balance in our experimentation methods. So we're using more of a balance between positive and negative reinforcement, and trying to incorporate more negative reinforcement. But we've got to be careful that we're using it at the appropriate times, because it can be misused. So why is it important to be studying equine psychology? It's really important to the safety of those who work with horses and the safety of the horses themselves, because a better understanding of the horses' minds can help us prevent accidents. So we can tell when they're going to react in a certain way that might cause harm to them or the people around them. That's really important. It's also important to know your own horse's physical limits in terms of how much work they can do, but also in terms of how much stimulation they can take, so that we can prevent overworking them, but we can also prevent putting them in a situation that's going to make them react in a way that will be harmful to those around them or themselves. It's also really helpful to develop an efficient and effective training method, so we can kind of see how a horse's brain works, how they learn, and then we can take that and apply that to training, and take bits and pieces of training methods that we already have and combine them into one that's efficient and effective for our training, so that we can train them the best that we can in the least amount of time. So what are the areas of equine psychology that require further study? In general, like I've said this before, but it's very important to emphasize, we need a lot more studies in order to generalize about horses as a whole. So like I said, a greater number of horses, different breeds, different ages, different sexes, to compare those different factors to. And so maybe we can make a general statement about a specific breed, which then once we've tested multiple breeds, we can make a general statement about multiple breeds together compared to one another. So just to name a few, because there are many different areas and probably areas that we still haven't identified that we could further study later. A couple would be the effects of DNA on personality and workability, the effectiveness of various training methods, and that kind of goes along with the best methods of teaching horses. So what are the best ways to teach them? What are the most effective ways? And how can we incorporate that in a training method? All right, that's all I have for today. Here are my sources and then my picture sources. And then, are there any questions?
Yeah, I actually have a couple questions. So first of all, you mentioned that when you do experiments on horses, people use positive reinforcement more often than negative reinforcement, even though negative reinforcement works better. So why is that? Why would people rather use positive reinforcement if it doesn't work as well?
I think it comes down to not wanting to be kind of mean to the horse in a way. I think that the negative reinforcement could be mean, but I think when we're doing an experiment, the horse is kind of working for us, and that we need them to cooperate with us well in order to get the information and the data that we're looking for. So we tend to want to praise them when they do something right instead of getting mad at them when they do something wrong. So I think it's just kind of natural to want to treat the horses well and praise them. Not that negative reinforcement is abuse or something bad. I think it's just we're trying to be more positive with them, but that's something that could be switched up and to be more effective in the future.
Okay, that makes sense. And then why has there not been more research done on equine psychology? Like, are there certain factors that make doing the research more difficult?
I would say like I said, it's hard to quantify, and so you can't really always get an exact answer, which makes it maybe less of an interesting experiment if you go into it not knowing if you're going to get a concrete answer or not. But in addition to that, it can be really expensive and very hard to get a large amount of horses, a large sample of horses to test and to keep and to feed. And mind you, they can't do anything else while they're doing this. It's not like they can keep doing work for someone that would be making money. They're kind of just stuck in this specific schedule for the experiment. So it's very expensive. And I think that's probably a big factor in why there haven't been more studies, because like I said, you don't know that you're going to get a concrete result, and it's very expensive to do. So you might just be throwing money at something that doesn't even get you the answer you're looking for. So.
Okay, thank you.